Mike or Michael is a
Hey, cool Emer. Sorry, my son's in here talking to me about the Goonies. You gonna go watch it? Stop. All right, so I'm gonna finish this book. Leland? Yeah, laugh. All right, now we're on chapter 12, and this one's called Med School. Dear Q, I'm writing as fast as I can. It helps keep my mind off the pain. I need to not think of the pain. ASD. You did get it? Right? I know, and it's not very big either. It's just this tiny little thing. So yeah, like if it wasn't for you guys, I would have read it in one sitting too. Yeah. So I'm running as fast as I can. It helps me keep my mind off the pain. I need to not think of the pain. No, think of something else. I should tell you things. Yes, things that will take my mind off the pain. It was not always this way. The pain, the meds, shrills in my head. No. But then life? Yes. Life schooled me. Lessons were taught, lessons that can't be taken back. Shit, here it comes. Break the chalk, break the chalk, break the chalk. I can feel it starting at the base of my neck. Damn it, I need my meds. Where is that goddamn orderly? He said if I would let him have his way, he would let me have mine. Asshole, now it has been 3 nights of his way and no damn meds for me. You're not so patiently waiting for the next one. What next one? That I'm gonna read? Or you're gonna read? Where the hell is that damn orderly? I keep listening for his keys. I don't hear any keys. I'm not putting up with this shit anymore from him. Bastard. If he does not bring me my meds this time, I swear to God, I will chomp his little pecker right off and teach him who's really in charge around here. I need my meds. The pain, it's coming. It always the same. The way it slowly crawls out the back of my neck, like a swarm of spiders with razor sharp pins of for legs. Jab, jab, jab. Of this book? Seriously? There's volume two? I only ever seen this one. Well, I need to get volume two because these are very interesting. Prodding into my back of my brain. Then the vomit trying to swim up my throat. The pain gets so intense, I want to grab the back of my scalp and rip it from my head and then tear out my brain. Shit, shit, shit. I need my meds. I need them now before the pain. No pain, no pain. This sounds to me like or I don't even know if it's a she, sorry. Sounds to me like they suffer from migraines and this person is being withheld their meds because this orderly likes to get his way with this person sexually. Promises the meds, but never actually gives the meds. I just need to keep writing about things. I can write, yes. I can write about things I learned, life. Yes, my big fat lesson of pain. I can tell you about that, but if the orderly doesn't get here soon, I'm going to teach that asshole a thing or two about pain. I am a professor of pain, Doc. If that worthless little dick bastard thinks he can have control over me like this, he's going to be taught very soon about who's really in control here. He better bring my damn meds soon. Wait, he's not coming? No, no, no. I must write. Yes, keep writing. It's not out yet? Oh, I can't wait till it comes out. Okay, I will tell you things were always this way for me. No, once I had a life of no pain. It was a beautiful life, Doc. There was a time it was just my mother and me, and we made the best of that. We had a one-bedroom apartment, but my mom always had it nicely decorated. When you were inside, you would forget about what was outside. You would forget how next door there were neighbors living in stink, filth, and cockroaches. We were always together, her and I. Though I took care of her like I was the mother, we loved each other very much. Then, when I was 10, I came home from school and found my mother oh, hanging by a rope from the beam in the ceiling. I hated her for that, letting me see her hanging as if she were just some broken light fixture. Is there like a date when it's gonna be out yet, or we just kinda have to play it by ear? That's interesting. Wanna see it? I wanna see it. I wanna read it. But I hated her even more later on for leaving me with that motherfucker and that poor excuse for a grandma who did nothing to protect me. She just ignored everything. No wonder my mother hung herself. Sorry, major trigger warning. Sad. I know I got it on my screen. I just wanna make sure. It was all shit when I lived with them. I tried to run away a dozen times, but the damn cops brought me back. Why the hell did they do that? If I left, why the shit did they bring me back? Dumbasses. Play by ear. Okay. Then when I was 13, the 18-year-old boy next door introduced me to smoking pot. That was the best day ever for me because I felt nothing and could feel nothing whenever I wanted. I was finally in control of pain-free. I did whatever I could to get pot. I had to have it every day. I had to. By the time I was 16, I had grown into a stocky girl, thick-muscled and abnormally strong. I was the one the kids at school came to when they wanted somebody's butt kicked. My grandfather had also stopped his bedtime visits when I turned 16. He was old and feeble by then. Basically, I could kick his ass too, which of course is exactly what I did. It only took one time because he left me alone after that. I was, however, still subjected to and sickened by the presence and his ever-present repulsive smell. Old people smell. Being high would erase all that, though. Stuff costs, of course, so I ended up stealing from my grandparents to supply my needs. At first, I would have sneaked just a couple bills from either grandparent's wallet or from the secret can at the top of the closet. Then I finally just said to hell with it and emptied both wallets and took all the money from the can. I don't feel bad about it. The way I look at it, they owed me. "You're just stealing from us," my grandfather yelled one day when I got home from school. "Shut up," I snapped and flipped him off as I headed for my room. He grabbed my arm, but I yanked it from his grasp and looked him straight in the eye. "I will knock you to the moon, old man, if you ever touch me again." He stepped back and I went to my bedroom. I put the Goat's Head Soup album on my turntable, and just as Dancing with Mr. D started playing, the door swung open and there was the old man stood with a baseball bat in his hand. Holy. Yeah, me too. Me too, SD. All these stories have the same thing in it. You notice that? I hate it. Down in the graveyard where we have our tryst, the air smells sweet. The air smells sick. Get out. Get out of this house and don't ever come back, he demanded, holding the bat high in the air. He never smiles. His mouth merely twists. The breath in my lungs, clinging and thick. But I know his name. He's called Mr. D. That's fine by me. I snatched my backpack off the bed and, after dumping my school books on the floor, I shoved what few clothes I had into it as fast as I could. Will it be poison? Put in my glass. Will it be slow or will it be fast? But do you know this, old man? I will be back, and when I am going to burn this place down with you in it. I zipped up the backpack and laughed at his stunned look. Dancing, dancing so free, dancing lord, keep your hat off me. Oh, I'm assuming this would be the record that's playing. I ripped the arm off the turntable, then went towards him, like it with a lit torch. Get out now, he yelled as his pale, wrinkled face began to turn red, and he shook the bat vigorously at me, stumbling nervously backwards. I dropped the turntable arm and yelled, kaboom. Still laughing, I walked out the door, sure to keep enough swinging distance between us. I'd only gone a couple feet down the hallway before I felt a big thud on the back of my head. Oh boy. I fell to the floor face first. I heard him yell for my grandmother and then tell her to fetch him some rope. Oh my God. I tried to turn over, but he hit me again on the back. Stay down, don't you move, he warned. My head was pounding, but when I tried to feel the back of my head for blood, he hit me for the third time, only this time it was even harder and I blacked out. When I woke up, I was back in my room with my feet and hands bound together. I was hogtied. Ugh. I remained locked in my room for what I think was about 5 days. I had to soil myself repeatedly, and that stopped after the third day only because they gave me no food or water. After the fifth day, a couple of pigs showed up. They untied me, and as they escorted me to the house, my grandfather yelled, "She's crazy. She's a loon. Get her out of here and never bring her back." Okay, so this is. Hi, Annette. Hey, if I make you fall asleep, honestly, that's fine by me. I've been told that before. At least I can do something, right? Considering these stories are pretty terrible. I broke loose from the police and ran towards my grandfather. After giving him a swift kick to the groin, I screamed, "Rapist! You're a goddamn child rapist." He fell to his knees, and I kicked him in the face again and again until the pigs finally grabbed me and dragged me out the door. I saw my grandmother standing in the doorway, watching me ride away in the back seat of the patrol car. They held me in jail for a few days for assaulting an elder. That's bullshit. The nice thing was that it was enough time for me to make a new drug connection and to find someone who offered me a place to stay when I got out. I told the pigs I had an aunt to stay with, and they bought it. But I don't think they gave a shit where I went as long as I was away. Once I was out of jail, I did whatever it took to survive. Dealt drugs, prostituted, and stole. So sad. I also paid visits to my grandparents, much to their horrific dismay. I would lean on the hood of the car parked in their driveway and smoke, all the while playing with my lighter. As soon as either of them saw me, I would yell kaboom and start laughing. Then I would leave because I knew they would call the pigs. Every now and then, the pigs would find me and question my whereabouts. But my new friends always vouched for me and assured the pigs I had been in church with them on that particular day and time. Right, bestie? Drunk and high one night, I paid them a final visit at 4 in the morning. When I snuck into the house through my old bedroom window, my foot got caught and I fell with a thud to the floor. You would think the noise would have woken them up, but I suppose they didn't hear a thing over my grandfather snoring. I went to their room, threw open the door, and flicked on the light switch. "Hey, what are you doing?" I screamed, loud as I could. Grandma instantly popped up, pulling the covers close to her chest and looking wide-eyed like a scared mouse. She shoved on Grandpa, and he finally popped up too. "Get the hell out of here," he yelled. "Hey, Deb." "That's okay, you're here now." I laughed. "We'll see about that." "Nah, I'm not leaving," I smiled. "Not until after I'm done with the both of you, anyway." I looked at him and then her. "Do you know what I mean by that?" Then I pulled up my lighter and lit it. I mean, the grandfather does deserve this. I'm not gonna say kind, I'm gonna say yeah. What do you think burning flesh smells like? I mean, especially your own. Do you think your skin burning will have its own distinct and nauseating smell? Oh, I'm sorry, Deb. I feel the same way when I miss things too. My grandfather reached around his back and conducted a desperate search under his pillow as if trying to catch a mouse. "What you gonna do, Grandpappy? Shoot me?" His searching hand froze. "Yeah, I figured it out, huh? I snuck in here this morning while your stupid bitch wife, la lad, in front of the TV, folding your underwear. I just walked in through the back door she always leaves open for Max." Grandma started to cry. "Hi, Brian." "Hey, Crystal." "Oh, and I see you figured out why little Max is nowhere to be found." "Shouldn't have the volume up so loud, grandmama. It drowns out the quick." Oh, come on, man. I was on this girl's side until this. "It drowns out the quick last yelp a puppy makes when you break its neck." Nah, I'm not on this person's side anymore. I smiled. "So what shall we do now?" "Get out, get the hell out and leave us alone. Or what, old man?" All of a sudden, I felt the cold muzzle of a pistol on the back of my neck freeze. Like I had a choice at that point. I don't think calling that 5-foot pig who arrested me, a piglet, and then asking him where Winnie the Pooh was helped me any that night. But I suppose being in front of the judge really sealed my fate, especially when I yelled at the cop to lick his balls during his testimony and then laughed and stated that he'd probably like to lick his piglet's balls instead. I have been a patron of institutions ever since. To be exact, I have been in two halls of shame. The first were some bullshit local country crab place where the workers were more fucked up than the patients were. Eventually, however, I was transferred here to Emerson, which was a godsend at first. When Dr. Huxley was here, he was a saint. He was. He's here. He's here finally. The goddamn orderly is here. My meds. Shit, shit, shit. I fucked up. He's dead. What? I don't know what happened. He didn't have the fucking meds. I have to have them. And then he tried and I kicked him to the ground. His keys flew. I ran and got them. He came after me, but I was stronger and stabbed him in the eye with a key. He fell face first to the floor. I slammed my foot down on his head. I think that broke his neck. His body was just lifeless, but I wasn't taking no chances and I started bashing in his head with my foot harder and harder. Blood pooled up. Blood is everywhere. I don't know what to do. Fuck, I fucked this up. They're gonna have a lockdown and it's going to mess up the whole damn plan. Damn it, shit. I hid his body under my covers, but there is blood. Blood everywhere. I'm gonna slip this letter under your door now. Maybe you can tell them Sable or Jackie, someone tell them what I did. Maybe they can fix it. Shit, someone will come looking for that orderly in a few hours, no time, but I do have the keys. I can let everyone out. Shit, I don't know. Let them know, tell me what to do. Shit. I know. I know I am going to leave this note under the door, then I'm going to go unlock all the doors quietly, one by one, then we can all be ready. Let them know, Dr. Q. Please let them know. Oh my God. I agree what she did to the orderly, but I don't agree what she did to the puppy. Nana. She lost my sympathy after that. Chapter 13. This one's called The Fist. The notification disappeared before you could click it? Really? Weird. Dear Dr. Quill, due to unforeseen events, I have been informed that we must act as of this moment, not as we had originally planned. The forces, this forces our hand, but we must move immediately. I have attached a letter I wrote and planned on giving you, although I had to cut it short. Thank you for taking on the responsibility of these letters and doing whatever you can to ensue that they get out to the right people in case we don't. Hey, Kimmy. The devil's grip will now meet the iron fist. June 23rd, 1978. Dear Dr. Quill, my story's simple. I had a drunk, loser father who took great joy in beating my older brother and me while my mother sat in a corner and stared at the wall. He had already successfully beaten her into oblivion. I was 12 when I found my mother passed out in a bathtub full of red water. My God, the agony these poor kids went through until adulthood, or even still in adulthood. Like, they don't get a freaking break. I was home from school and noticed water pouring out from underneath the door. I pushed the door open. There she lay, with her head on the edge of the tub, eyes closed, faucet running. I ran out the front door and over to the neighbors. They called the cops and an ambulance. The police sat with me at the hospital until my dad showed up. One of the officers tried to explain what had happened to my father, but he didn't want to listen. Instead, he yanked me by my arm and dragged me out of the door. On our way home, he screamed at me for going to the neighbors and getting the police and hospital involved. Fortunately, the clanking sound of the Ford truck drowned out most of his words, so I just stared straight ahead and tried to block out the image of my mother in the tub. Can you imagine that? Like, what the fuck? A week later, my father took me to the mental institution to visit my mother. Wait, what? My father took me to the mental institution to visit my mother. She was dressed in a white gown and had bandages wrapped all the way around her wrist and up to the crease of her elbow. Okay, so she survived. That's good, I hope. We sat across the table from her in the recreation room. She never made eye contact and mumbled nonsense when father asked her anything. I was disturbed by the surroundings, people walking around talking to no one, yelling or hitting themselves. It reminded me of the movie Night of the Living Dead. After that day, I knew one thing for sure. I would never let myself end up as a mental patient. Mom came home about a month after, but she was never quite the same. She couldn't carry on a conversation, and she mostly sat in front of the TV, even if there was just static. She didn't cook or clean. She either sat or slept. After a couple of weeks of playing Mr. Nice Guy, my father got fed up. Goddamn woman, you get your ass up. You don't get to sit around and not do shit because you think it's cute to cut all over yourself and then abandon us. She sat in the chair staring at the TV. Do you hear me, you imbecile? He screamed. She did not move. He charged forward and backhanded her along the side of the head. She fell to the floor. She lay there, not moving. Get your goddamn ass up, he yelled, and kicked her in the ribs. She stood up slowly, smoothed the folds of her dress, and then walked into the kitchen. I was sitting at the table pretending to do my homework. I did not look up, but kept my nose buried in my history book. She pulled out a kitchen drawer and removed something. I snuck a quick glance at her and saw the butcher knife in her hand. I didn't have time to even think about stopping her before she ran back into the living room, but I knew what was about to happen. I jumped out of my chair and rushed out the back door. I ran over to the neighbor's house. I had a feeling my father wasn't going to be around to be pissed off at me again. By the time the police got there, he was dead. My mother had bludgeoned him, according to the police, 22 times. The coroner's office said the first stab probably killed him instantly. Shortly thereafter, she was put back into the mental hospital, and I was sent to live with my grandparents. My grandfather had been wheelchair bound and was no better than my father had been. He yelled at my grandmother all the time to do this and that, and to it now. Nothing was ever right or good enough. As soon as I turned 18 and got my high school diploma, I left. I never saw either one of them again. I took a job as a dishwasher in a rundown restaurant in a town about 90 miles north of my grandparents' place. From there, I went from dishwashing job to dishwashing washing job until I was finally a good 3 states away. Eventually, I became a bar back, then a bar everything. I spent more time drinking than cleaning, which also led to a lot of fistfights. Something about the excitement and adrenaline rush of a good fight really got me going. Any man who thought he could push me around would learn real quick that he couldn't. Sometimes even to the point of me putting him in the hospital. One night while I was hanging out at the bar, I guess I wasn't as drunk as usual because I blindsided a guy for no reason. Why? Because I could. He hit the floor hard. And when his dazed eyes looked up and pleaded for me not to hit him again, I saw my mother's eyes from many years back. I realized then that I had become the same monster my father and grandfather had been. I wanted to stop at that point, but to be honest, I couldn't. I had inherited my father's blue eyes and his mean temper. In an attempt to tame my urge to pummel someone, I began taking jobs as a bouncer. I believed that if I had to knock a guy out, he would have deserved it at least. Eventually, I applied for a position as an orderly at a mental hospital. It was actually Dr. V who made me an offer I couldn't refuse. He had asked around, and I was the guy who was well known for not caring and would take a guy down just for the hell of it. The money was almost 3 times the amount I was making as a bouncer, and I didn't think I would have a problem with taking loonies down, but I did. Right from the beginning, all I could see was my mother. I was going to leave. Then I realized I could be the guy who did the takedowns differently. The other orderlies were violent, much as I had been in my bar fighting days. Eventually, I became known as the takedown king, and the other orderlies called on me. Less work for them. What I didn't know about this place at first was the other side of the wall, where the patients are treated like lab rats. Worse than lab rats. I only went on that side once. Never again. All I could think about was what if my mother had been electrocuted, beaten, had drugs shoved down her throat, followed by being thrown into a 6 by 6 cell with little or no food and water. It was as if these patients were not even human. I was going to leave at that point, but I had nowhere to go. Though I made up my mind that I was not going to be part of this butchery. Then you came to me, Dr. Q, about Sable and her plan. I knew then how to do whatever it took to help them, so I stayed. That will be a part of butchery, just not of the patients. Maybe in some way it will avenge my mother's suffering. Maybe it will avenge mine. Harrison. Doctor's final note. July 4th, 1978. So this is the last one. I came to the Emerson Rose Asylum in the winter of 1950. At that time, Dr. Huxley was in charge and busy setting forth new conceptual therapeutic techniques that would help the patient evolve into a functional citizen who could reside within society. I was awestruck by what I had heard about him from fellow colleagues, and coming to Emerson to work with him because became my only obsession. Sorry. Emerson Rose Asylum had been originally founded by an influential group of wealthy families who needed a safe haven for their mentally ill family members. It had been a small institution in the beginning, with the capacity to house only 50 patients. When Dr. Huxley first accepted directorship of Emerson Rose, there had only been 43 patients, but in just a couple of years, he had whittled it down to 29, meaning he was able to send 14 patients back home permanently. His goal, he would say in jest, was to put himself out of business. Dr. Huxley figured if he could come up with an effective way for families to work with their mentally ill family members, then he has succeeded in living his life fully. Dr. Huxley sounds like an amazing man. I do hope that nothing bad happened to him. Mind you, Dr. Quill, he had told me once and only once, there will always be those who will have to remain institutionalized and will need a lifetime of care because it is what it is. His face saddened. Then he quickly diverted his attention to another subject. Today, I believe, will be the day I beat you in chess, Dr. Quill. Whether his game playing was intentional or sincere, he never did beat me at a game of chess. Dr. Huxley called the asylum patients patrons because he saw the patients as people. His philosophy was that the patrons of Emerson were here to receive schooling and socialization and would be able to return to the world as a happy and productive citizen. The first part of his treatment plan was for the patient to accept that they had a mental illness. He then worked with the mental illness, not to cure it. Therefore, he did not treat the patron as if he or she had some kind of plague. The idea was to work with the illness, not against it. If someone is blind, one doesn't work with them by instilling delusions of their someday regaining their sight. One helps them learn how to interact with the seeing world. Dr. Huxley approached each of their illnesses on an individual basis. He believed and saw most of his patrons as borderline sane. Mind you, though, if the behavioral issue was uncontrollable or too psychotic, where the patron could cause harm to himself or others, then medications and other psychotherapy treatments were utilized. He was a visionary, not a fool. They have been treated like loonies for so long, Dr. Quill, that they have come to believe it. When others pointed out to these patrons that their thoughts and behaviors were not like everyone else's, they were also leading them to believe that they were outcasts or loonies. Who defines normal, Dr. Quill? What makes any human an expert on such things? If we could actually read each other's thoughts, we would see how we all have a little Mad Hatter running around in our head. He was right, and I must admit that I was no exception. Dr. Huxley's staff taught the Emerson school approach. From the orderlies to the nurses, they were here to school the patrons on social skills and the rights and wrongs of social behaviors. Another important factor in Dr. Huxley's philosophy was that Emerson was never to be called an asylum. However, it was never called a school, for that would have been mockery. It was simply called Emerson Rose. If, after the therapy and meds, they get their heads on straight and they are still not socially accepted, what would have been the point of the therapy and meds? Dr. Huxley reminded his staff regularly. Any staff that could not grasp or accept his philosophy would be asked to leave. Whenever Dr. Huxley let a staff member go, he would remind the others, one fat apple rots a whole orchard of trees. We are here to be fruitful. For the most part, Emerson Rose was kind of a haven. It had been decorated with fine art, and the internal architecture was fit for a king's palace. The rooms were painted and trimmed with warm, soft colors. No white walls in our house, Dr. Huxley said as he gave me a tour after I first arrived. That's like amazing. If all these asylums could be like that, I guarantee that these people who are insane or having issues um, would definitely be able to get out one day. Not all, but some. The patrons were allowed to decorate their rooms with personal items as long as they could not use them to hurt themselves or others. Like, that's a great idea. I don't know if yeah, you guys that were here when I showed the documentary of the Brockville psychiatric unit that's now closed, um, especially with Carol. Finally she got new teeth, but like I think they're able to put some things up, but to actually be able and like decorate their room and do their own thing, which that one not really. I think it would be a better approach, and I think it would help people. I really do. Well, thank you, Jackie. You're cleaning? Yeah, that's what I do is put on something like this whenever I'm cleaning too. Thank you for the $10. That's amazing. Thank you. Most of the rooms, however, tended to be decorated with pillows and afghans the patrons had made during domestic skills time. Well, that sounds amazing. Only those who could safely handle a needle were allowed to sew these items. Those who could not received them as gifts from the sewing group. I mean, this is what we need in all asylums. And to not be allowed to call them asylums, but to call them like they did Emerson Rose. The patrons were also allowed three 4x6 picture frames with no glass. Most of them did not have actual photographs, so they would draw pictures of those they loved during art time. They had an art time. Only pictures that made you smile were allowed, and more often than not, they depicted the patrons themselves. Or comic book heroes. Some of them drew Dr. Huxley. Dr. Huxley had made light of the locked doors by saying, "The locks on the doors are to keep you safe from those on the outside." Dr. Huxley lived at the asylum as well. However, I did not know exactly where his sleeping quarters were. I do know he was always here. If the staff joked to him about taking vacation, he would jest, "To me, this is vacation, and it is my home. So I guess you could say this is my vacation home." His warm smile reflected his sincerity. Our meal times, whether breakfast, lunch, or supper, were called family gatherings. I think every single orderly needs to read this book, and I think every doctor in that facility needs to read that book in any facility because if things were done this way, I believe that things would be a lot better off. Kindness goes a long way. We are asked to be punctual, and proper manners were a must. Napkins went on laps, food was eaten with utensils, and only proper dinner conversation was allowed. When a patron did not follow these simple requests, they were excused by an orderly and escorted back to their room. As a result, they would miss having dessert, which was punishment enough for any patron, as everyone always looks forward to dessert. That was their punishment. They get to miss dessert. When patrons demonstrated uncontrollable behavior, such as hitting themselves, the staff was trained to handle it in a calm and smoothing manner. The behavior would be brought to the patron's attention, and they were asked to stop. If they did not stop, the patron had to be excused from the setting and go to their room. Most patrons learned quickly that uncontrollable impulses needed to be acted out in their own rooms. Dr. Huxley felt it was important to give them something they could control, such as leaving the situation. Hi, Elaine. There was a certain percentage of patrons that Dr. Huxley knew would never leave the Emerson Rose, those with violent behavior and a continual need for sedation. However, Dr. Huxley treated all patrons as though they would be able to leave one day. Every patron must have a goal and a purpose, or they will feel like they have nothing to live for. We are all here for some reason or another, even if the reason is not apparent or obvious. A honeybee that lands on a flower has its reason for being there, as do we for being here. A flower is not told to grow, it just does. We are here for the patrons. We are their gardeners. When I first came to Emerson, I had wanted to check in so I could check it out. I had thought Dr. Huxley would be understanding and would allow me to hibernate in my room for the rest of my days. However, that only lasted one day, for he seemed to need my professional advice on all sorts of matters. Looking back, I realized he had the answers all along. He was merely helping me create my something. Yeah, this doctor sounds pretty friggin' amazing if you ask me. I became a psychiatrist at 28, a very young age to come into that profession, and my colleagues initially turned their noses at me. I continued, though, and had a prosperous practice. I mostly treated young, wealthy wives with depression symptoms. I suppose my youth was a draw for them. Nothing. Nonetheless, it gave me the opportunity to specialize and make even more money. My father had been a surgeon, and my becoming a quack, as he called it, was nothing short of a disappointment to him. He acknowledged my quack status on a constant basis. My father's shining glory was my younger brother, John, but I was not jealous. My brother was the type of young man that everyone loved. John was attractive, intelligent, and his humble nature was probably his most alluring trait. His glow lit up every room he walked into. John, of course, had become a surgeon just as our father had done. John knew how to keep all of us in good standing, though. He was the mediator between my father and me, and with regards to my quack practice. I know, right? I love Dr. Huxley. It's a shame that he's passed and this other asshole took over and ruined everything. John always came to my defense. Kind of ironic, I suppose, now that I think of how things turned out in the end. My brother, in the prime of his life, was in a horrendous car accident. He had swerved for some reason we will never know, but it hadn't kept his vehicle from slamming into a building. His fiancée was thrown out the passenger side door. John jumped out of the car, blood gushing from the cut on his head, and scooped her up in his arms. He held her closely and sobbed uncontrollably as she took her last breath. John blacked out shortly thereafter, and he never fully recovered mentally. After his fiancee's death, my brother became numb and out of sorts. Depression conquered him first, and then it took over my father as he watched John slowly deteriorate. Mother finally came and begged for my help. It just so happened that I was in the midst of learning the latest techniques of lobotomy, and it was being taught by the master himself. Oof. Yeah, I don't agree with the lobotomy. At the time, this technique seemingly had extensive success in therapeutic cures. Psychosurgery that cut the connection to and from the prefrontal cortex of the brain. It was being highly recommended by the top psychiatrists. I was young, naive, egotistical, and believed I could play God. I lost. My mother was against trying this newest method, but I convinced her I was an angel swooping down to save her from this hell. Instead, I became her Satan. John was supportive of the procedure, and he would let no one except me perform the procedure. I was not authorized or I was not authorized or licensed to do so, but I did it. I did not attend my father's funeral. How could the psychiatrist's son of the man who committed suicide show up for such a thing? I'm sure my mother was there pushing the wheelchair of my vegetable brother across the cemetery lawn. Oh boy. Dr. Huxley never asked why I'd chosen to check myself into the Emerson Rose. Maybe he already knew, though. Some his colleagues, or maybe it did not matter to him. Either way, I was here to stay. Dr. Huxley treated me as though I was his assistant. Even when I was locked in my room at night, I'd always felt like a part of the medical staff and not a patient of Emerson Rose. Then, in the middle of the night on June 6, 1976, Dr. Huxley died of a sudden heart attack. The next morning, as we all rolled out of bed, something awful was in the air. Something was not right. It felt cold, empty. By breakfast, we all knew of his death, and the pain of his loss screamed through Emerson. Some did swear by it, yeah. 2 weeks after Dr. Huxley's death, Dr. Vaneden took over, and he quickly ripped out the soul of this place. Our haven soon turned into the darkest realms of hell. I'm cutting my letter short now, as I've explained why we are writing these letters to you. The patients are determined to overtake Dr. V and his staff. Conviction and faith can be a powerful weapon, but in reality, I am fearful they will lose. However, I consider this an act of valor, as they are fighting for themselves and the inhumane treatment of others. Doing nothing would have been worse than losing. In their doing, they will have at least one victorious battle. This is something no treatment in the world could ever have given them a purpose. Take a look. My name is Katrina Russell. and I am the one who found these letters embedded in a mattress before the Emerson Rose Asylum was torn down. I had thought that this would be the end, the only thing left of the patient, staff, asylum, but I was wrong. These letters documented the last days, but the outcome had not been known, and it seemed that the mystery would forever be unresolved. However, these letters were only the beginning, and much to my surprise, they would not be the final letters from the looney bin. Oh, you're right, SD. So they're coming out with another book with the rest of the letters. So I can't wait to get it. It's not out yet, but it will be. So we still don't know what happened. Purpose is a powerful motivator. I can't wait to read the other book. SD already read this book. If it wasn't for you guys, I said the same thing. I would have read it front to back in one night. I was just so interested in this book. So basically, what we know from these letters is everyone, not everyone, but a lot of these patrons were all in on it to take down Dr. Vanadin and escape. Thing is, when these letters were found, they still don't know. I know I hate cliffhangers. I can't wait until the other one comes out. Hopefully, we will figure it out. But it looks like there's going to be a fight till death. If that's what I feel like. I feel like that's what the book is saying. All the patients against the staff. We don't know who won though, because every single one of them have disappeared. All the doctors, all the orderlies, all the patients, all the staff, everything. They're gone without a trace. Nobody knows where they are. Absolutely gone. That's insane. I found something here that I was going to read to you guys. Yeah, and especially that the book's not out yet, right? I know. It's like I want to see this so bad. Sorry. Read this. So I found this. This is like the only thing I found. So apparently, Emerson Hospital is a hospital located in Concord, Massachusetts, at 133 Old Road to 9 Acre Corner. It was founded in 1911 on 40 acres. Donated by Charles Emerson, a nephew of Ralph Waldo Emerson. It is a full service, nonprofit community hospital and acute care medical center with, as of 2006, 177 beds, providing advanced medical services to over 300,000 individuals in 25 towns. Yeah, that's in 2006. Well, in 1977, it wasn't like that. So, History. Emerson's wife died on December 7th, 1910. The Concord expertise on December 18th provided details that a gift of land and money had been given to the New England Diaconess Association. The article stated, the gift comes through Mr. Emerson, whose wife was recently an inmate of the Brooklyn Hospital and who made an offer to the institution before her death was recently occurred. The hospital will be known as the Concord Hospital and will be run on much the same principles as the hospital in Longwood, where patients who cannot afford to pay are taken free, and those who are able to pay to do so. When the hospital opened in 1911, the Concord Enterprise reporter who had toured the facility wrote, the hospital building was 2 stories tall, with basement constructed in the Colonel style with a gambrel roof. The article stated that the hospital was constructed using terracotta tiles. Ooh, that sounds beautiful. With concrete facing. One entered the vestibule of the hospital through swinging doors. Walls were pale green, with natural finished birch woodwork. From the vestibule, one entered the main hospital. Upon entering the main hall, one's eye is instantly attracted by a picture on the wall at the right. This picture, which of Miss Charles Emerson, the gift of Mr. Emerson, is painting by William James, son of the late Professor James of Harvard. And that's what they said in the book, that it was dressed, the whole thing was dressed nicely. It was beautiful. Facing financial difficulties in October 1924, would have been known as the Deaconess Hospital, incorporated in Concord with the name Emerson Hospital. This was in 1924. The newly named hospital opened in November, and first admission was an 8-year-old boy with appendicitis. In 1934, the rates for a bed in the ward were billed $350 per day, with the cost of a private room increasing to $425. Rates for maternity were greater, ranging from $4 to $650 for a private room per day. The hospital charged $10 for the delivery of a baby. Can you imagine? That is something cheap today. Charges for use of the operating room were $5 plus $5 for anesthesia for minor cases and $10 plus $5 for anesthesia for major surgical cases. The removal of tonsils cost $9.50, while any treatment requiring the use of dressings ranged in fees from $2 to $5. Even at these rates, many patients could not afford the services they received, while a patient at Emerson, the laboratory charged fees ranging from $1 to $5. Oh yeah, get this. I remember reading this and I'm like, what? So in 1962, Steve Carell, you know that guy, the actor? He was the one in 40-Year-Old Virgin. You guys know what I'm talking about? I hope they won. Hey, Kimberly Ann. Sounds to me like the patients won. Then outside forces came in, gained control, and wiped everything out. I can go with that. Yeah. Yeah, I'm done the book already, but you can always go back. Right now I'm just doing I have some cliff notes here about the book, or about the hospital, sorry. But Steve Carell, the guy that was the 40-Year-Old Virgin, I don't know if you guys seen that movie, but he was admitted there. So it says, in 1962, Steve Carell, an American actor, comedian, producer, and writer and director, well known for portraying Michael Scott in the TV show The Office, was born in Emerson Hospital. I did not know that. Pretty neat, eh? In 1982, the board of directors, they skipped right past the 70s. Oh, you bastards. In 1982, the board of directors voted to create a parent cooperation. Nope, corporation. Emerson Health System, Inc. As the chairman of the board wrote in 1982 annual report, the new corporation was to provide a conceptual framework for development of a more comprehensive health system and a legal structure in which small, potentially revenue-producing corporations would be formed free from state-regulated budgets constraints, blah, 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 blah. So Emerson Health System is a non-for-profit organization, okay, still in Massachusetts law and tax exempt from the Internal Revenue Code. Is a sole member of Emerson Health System Inc. is the sole member of Emerson Hospital and elects the board of directors of the hospital. Emerson Hospital is also a not-for-profit corporation. That's it. They totally skipped past the 70s. But in the 60s, we know that Steve Carell was born there. Wow. This book, it's called Letters from the Looney Bin. It's amazing. I love this book. Right? Hey, Heavenly Cow. I know, like, I didn't know he was born there. I had no idea. That's crazy. But I'm done the book now. It's very small. Like, see what I mean? It's small, but it's got all what it is, it's patients writing to this doctor named Dr. Quinn. The name doesn't exist. They just used a pseudonym. Um, it was a good book, but they're coming out with part two. I can't wait to read it. I just don't know that when it's coming out. Because it says at the very end of this book, it says, it seemed that the mystery would forever be unresolved. However, these letters were only the beginning. And much to my surprise, they would not be the final letters from the loony bin. So that was cool reading that. I was like, what? And then SD told me that there's another book coming in. We just don't know when. All right. What did I want? I said something about ghosts, did I not? I know I did. America's most notorious insane asylums. I had that picked out. Where the hell's the ghost one? There's a Canadian Ontario, Kingston one. Oh my God, it's got to list all the patients. Jesus. You know what's weird is all these last names are cities and places in Ontario. Wow. Belleville, Kingston, Frontenac, Brantford, Brockville. Like all these people were in this asylum. Where the hell is it? Thought I 4 of the world's most notorious barbaric and creepy insane asylums. I think maybe that might have been one. Nope, found it. All right. Hey, Teresa. What's your question, Miss Dibby? Hi, Hannah Wood. All right, so this one I found, I thought it'd be interesting. So this is called America's Most Notorious Insane Asylum Hauntings. This was done December 2022. So this apparently is a haunted insane asylum this year. I don't know where the hell is it located. What the Shadow Man? No way. Okay, it's just this opening. Death, illness, and tragedy have long permeated the history of American insane asylums. Beginning in the late 18th century, buildings that housed the criminally and mentally insane swept the country like the plague. Now all lost to history is the brutality of these institutions. Torture and abuse all but flowed freely, and time is yet to erase the multitude of horror that was brought down upon each surviving soul. Take a journey into the world of asylums and see why they are some of the scariest places on earth. And join me for a road trip into the supernatural. All right. Shadow Man, like really, that's the first one. That's the scariest one for me. I've seen him. The hat though. Yes, Kimberly. It's written by her. Yep. Okay, so this one is about the Shadow Man, and this is the Ridges in Athens, Ohio. Facts. The Ridges, also known as the Athens Mental Health Center, is located in Athens, Ohio. Originally monikered the Athens Asylum for the Criminally Insane, this massive institution first opened its doors on January 9th, 1874, 135 years ago. The state and federal governments had purchased over 1,000 acres of land from the Coates, a family whose farm had previously occupied the land. The main building, enormous in structure, was designed around the idea that it was therapeutic for patients to be housed in a facility that resembled a home. I can agree to that. Asylums at this time were more often than not a facade of mental abuse and torture. The Ridges was a first of its kind, an asylum where, oh, trigger warning, bleeding, freezing, and kicks to the head were not thought of as ways to shock the illness out of the brain. These less disturbed patients were housed closer to the center where the administrative offices and employee housing were. The violent patients were housed at the far end of the wings, away from the employee housing and convenient exits and entries. The building housed over 200 patients until overcrowding ensued in the early 1900s. The patient count then rose to nearly 2,000. Holy shit. In a building with only 544 rooms. The increase in popularity led to the decline in patient treatment. Once unique in its mental practices, the Ridges fell prone to old-time customs. Eventually, the Ridges reverted to a hostile patient care, including physical abuse, water treatment, shock therapy, and lobotomies. By 1993, the Athens Asylum for the Criminally Insane bust its last patient out and closed its doors for good. All patients except one, that is. On December 1st, 1978, a female patient named Margaret Schilling disappeared from one of the active wards. On January 12th, 1979, 42 days later, they found her lifeless body on the abandoned top floor of Ward number 20. The ward at the time, abandoned and closed down for years, was used for sick, infectious patients. A search was done when the woman went missing, but apparently the only floor not checked was Ward number 20. When a maintenance man found her body, lifeless, cold, and unclothed, she had been dead for several weeks. The official cause of death was heart failure, but why still remains a mystery. A stain in the shape of a human figure can still be seen on the floor where she died. It is said that her spirit can be seen peering from the window of the room in which she spent her final moments. People also said to hear disembodied female voices, lights, shadow people, and the sound of squeaking gurneys. Wow. Sorry, I was just looking up at that. Who the hell wants peanut butter powder? Ew. This is Danvers State Lunatic Asylum in Danvers, Massachusetts. Good night, Annette. Yeah, it sounds like a good idea, Deb. You can just harass. Let me know if anybody's heard of these asylums. So this one is Danvers State Lunatic Asylum in Massachusetts. Here's the facts. Danvers State Lunatic Asylum is probably one of the most notoriously haunted and intriguing places on Earth. High atop Hawthorne Hill. Ooh, I think I heard this. Overlooking the scenic countryside sits an incomprehensibly massive structure. Dawned, the witch's castle on the hill. Danvers State Lunatic Asylum was constructed in 1878, costing a mere $1.5 million. Wow, and was considered to be an architectural masterpiece. In 1878, it was $1.5 million. That's insane. The asylum resides in the town of Danvers, Massachusetts, which many people are unaware was formerly known as Salem Village. Oh shit, this is getting interesting. I like this. Which many people are unaware was formerly known as Salem Village. Salem Village was the first actual location of the 1692 Salem witch trials. Unbeknownst to some, the witch trials did not begin in Salem, but in Salem Village, or present-day Danvers, at a church on Center Street. That's why this sounds familiar. The trials were later moved to a larger building in Salem when hysteria ran rampant and onlooking spectators swarmed the church. More significantly, the most fanatical judge of the witch trials, Jonathan Hawthorne lived in a house built by his father in 1646 at the top of the hill in the exact location on which the asylum stands today, hence the name Witch's Castle. It has also been speculated that John Proctor and four other accused witches were hung on Gallows Hill in 1692, the property on which the Danvers was built. Creepy? For sure. Danvers was the epitome of ever-changing healthcare at the turn of the century, and its humane treatment of patients earned it a brilliant reputation. But like so many others of its time, it fell victim to rising costs, lack of government funding, understaffing, and overpopulation. Its deteriorated physical state was a hellhole likened to that of a German death camp. Holy crap. A once humane facility had turned dark by the mid half of the century. Danvers between 1940 and 1950 housed over 2,600 mentally ill patients in a structure only designed to house 600. Due to overcrowding, it relied on medical interventions customary to famous asylums at the time. Shock treatment, hydrotherapy, insulin shock therapy, psychosurgery, and lobotomies. The frontal lobotomy was said to be perfected here to keep its burgeoning senses under control. Patients became haggard and ghostly, often spending a majority of time alone and in solitary confinement in a space no larger than a small bathroom. Poorly clothed and sometimes naked, these legions of lost souls were shown pacing aimlessly on the wards, living on the filthy cement floors, or sitting head in hand against the pockmarked walls. It was so bad that a lifeless patient would go unnoticed for days. That's so sad. Finally, in 1992, Danvers State Lunatic Asylum shut its doors for good. It took them until 1992. The remaining patients were placed accordingly in other facilities, and the castle was locked down. 14 years passed as the building sat abandoned. Then in 2005, the property was bought, and parts of the once Gander Hospital were demolished. Although still recognizable, Danvers State is now apartments. And although part of the original structure was kept, the foreboding that once emanated from this great palace is gone. Jeez. You're still gonna have the gory true crime lives? I like them. So the hauntings of this place, with such a trivial history, it's no wonder why Danvers was dubbed one of the scariest places on earth. Although this is what bothers me. They converted it into apartments. I think that should almost be like a sacred land considering the hangings, just the patients that were there. It's a bad place. If it screams bad juju to me, they should have demolished it and like planted flowers there or something and trees. I don't know, but although converted to apartments, the lure and legends of Danvers remains. People have reported flickering lights, full-body apparitions, and hearing invisible footsteps and doors that open and close on their own. Whether the hauntings are residual energy burned into the atmosphere of this eerie place or whether they are intelligent, it's up to you to decide. I would say both. Next one is the Byberry Mental Hospital in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Byberry Mental Hospital is located on the outskirts of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Byberry was first constructed in 1906 and opened its doors to its first patients in 1907. It began its humble beginnings as a working farm for the mentally ill, but between 1910 and 1920, construction of the large asylum was begun and completed. As asylum popularity grew throughout the country by the mid-1930s, Byberry's population quickly expanded, and with it came tales of patient abuse and neglect. I think every single one of these is the problem. And if people would actually talk to other doctors or other facilities, you would know if you overcrowd a place like this, abuse is going to happen. I mean, insufficient funds left the asylum in disrepair, and parents Patients wound up unclothed, starved, and sleeping in raw sewage-filled hallways. Many patients were forced to live huddled in decrepit, dingy rooms with no socialization or supervision. Every sorry, my lips are getting tired, I think. Every mental institution nightmare you can imagine came true. Padded cells, restraining devices, solitary confinement, beatings by brutal warders, and violent inmates. Lobotomies and electric shock were just some of the horror treatments used. Byberry became known as a real life house of horrors as murder, suicide, and brutality reigned. Right. Finally, in 1990, state authorities were forced to close the doors of Byberry after a thorough investigation advertised the despicable living conditions within Byberry's walls. Yet, its dark history continued on and remains to this day. The crumbling building that once housed hundreds of mentally insane patients and the subterranean tunnels that connected them were left vacant and forgotten until now. There's a multitude of horror stories surrounding Byberry. After it closed, it became a magnet for all sorts of unwelcome visitors. Thieves, vagrants, gangs, satanic cults, and possibly former inmates in search of shelter. Less mentally ill patients were tossed to the street after Byberry closed. This is in 1990 when it finally closed, and you're telling, wow, this just blows my mind. The miles of catacombs beneath the abandoned asylum has also given rise to some very creepy stories. One freakishly scary urban legend concerns a former patient who reportedly still lurks in the tunnel below, hiding in wait, wielding a large knife to slice the throats of any unsuspecting explorer that should cross his path. It is also said that a gang of satanic occultists have taken refuge in the dilapidated building. The satanic rituals that are said to take place here have possibly opened up a door to hell within these walls, as growling sounds and bodily welts and scratches have been reported. So take caution should you adventure at night. Ghosts are not the only thing lying in wait. Hell no, I would never go there. Look at that thing. Nope. This says Waverly Hills Sanatorium in Louisville, Kentucky. Yes, I've decided to save the best for last. Welcome to Waverly Hills. Wow, 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 wow. Okay, I'm stopping. Hee hee hee. Facts. In Louisville, Kentucky, perched high upon a massive hill, sits Waverly Hills Sanatorium. This reigning fortress of doom in its decaying state, casts an eerie feeling upon the city below. The atmosphere surrounding Waverly creates a sense of foreboding and is further darkened by a chilling history. Thank you. Waverly Hills Sanatorium was built in 1924 to replace an existing hospital built in 1910 that became overpopulated due to the rapid spread of a plague-like disease, tuberculosis. Although Waverly Hills was considered the most advanced tuberculosis sanatorium in the country, hundreds of adults and children still perished at the peak of the epidemic. Ultimately, the deaths occurred because of lack of medicines. A cure for tuberculosis wouldn't come out until 1940, and although treatments were performed to help alleviate the condition of the patient, most times they were just as horrific as the disease itself, and most patients did not survive. By the late 1930s, a decline in tuberculosis occurred, and then in 1943, a cure of the disease was made available worldwide. Patients were treated accordingly, and when healthy, were released. And then in 1946, after tuberculosis was under control, Waverly House shut down. Yet that was not the end of the story. It was later reopened as Woodhaven Geriatric Sanatorium in 1961. During this time, there were many stories of patient mistreatment and unusual experiences. By 1982, Waverly was shut down indefinitely. Today it sits abandoned, ravaged by time. Hauntings. With 64,000 deaths under its belt. 64,000. It's no wonder why Waverly Hills is considered to be one of the most haunted asylums in the country. As if death wasn't enough to cause a haunting, it has also been speculated that satanic rituals have taken place within its walls. Shadow people lurk within its corridors, accompanied by disembodied voices and slamming doors. Here are a few well-known occurrences at Waverly. Right? That's what I'm saying. I can't believe they did that. Like, what the hell are they thinking? Hell yes, it's haunted. No, just keep calling me Nikki. Don't call me Supernatural Crime with Nikki. I just changed, that's the channel name, but I'm still Nikki. They have to, yeah, they have to tell you about the history. I think it's 5 years back. That's it. Pretty sure. The rest of it, they don't have to tell you anything. Like, that's the scary part. Well, that's what I do though, is supernatural and paranormal and crime. All right, here's the hauntings. The main entrance. So an elderly woman is often seen in spectral form, crying for help, bleeding with her wrist and ankles chained. My God. Oh, gotcha. Dun. On the third floor, it is said, depending on who is speaking, that either a ghostly little boy, Robert, or a girl, Mary, haunts the third floor. Oftentimes, people report seeing this ghostly apparition playing with a ball. Others have only heard the ball bouncing on the floor or down the stairs. The roof. On the roof, the faint voices of children are often heard singing, ringing around the rosy on the roof. The children ones would just kill me. The fifth floor in room 502. Stories say that in 1928, the head nurse in room 502 was found dead in her room. She had committed suicide by hanging herself from the light fixture. She was 29 years old at the time of her death and allegedly unmarried and pregnant. Oh, poor girl. Her depression over the situation led her to take her own life. It's unknown how long she may have been hanging in this room before her body was discovered. Then in 1932, another nurse who worked in room 502 was said to have jumped from the roof patio and plunged several stories to her death. Holy crap. No one seems to know why she would have done this, but many have speculated that she may have actually been pushed over the edge. There are no records to indicate this, but rumors continue to persist. It is reported that people have seen her full body apparition on this floor. Feelings of despair are oftentimes felt in this area, as well as a voice growling, "Get out." The fourth floor. The fourth floor is regarded as one of the most creepy, scary, and active areas in the hospital. Doors are reported to slam for no apparent reason in an area of the fourth floor that is off limits to human occupants due to the unsafe nature of the area. Ghostly shadow like silhouettes are also said to be seen lurking in the halls as well. Sorry, I was just reading why am I on Discovery? I have another long one here. Oh, so I confused everybody? Shit, sorry. Yeah, just do that. Hey, trio. I found this. This is Upper Canada, Ontario, Kingston Rockwood Insane Asylum inmates. That is huge. Holy shit. So apparently, the establishment of the mental hospitals in Upper Canada from the 1840s to the 1880s brought some relief to mentally ill people who had previously been placed in jails, almshouses. I don't know how to even say that. Almshouses, or who had been left to care for themselves. Throughout Upper Canada's history, early history, many mentally ill people were left to wander at will, provided that they neither endangered nor were perceived to endanger people or property. Others who were viewed as disruptive or elicited fear in the populace were placed in almshouses, poorhouses, jails, and penitentiaries. The rise of the institutional psychiatry in the form of asylums, where it did bring some relief to mentally ill people, also caused a considerable amount of misery for a portion of the asylum residents. I bet. What they shared was a sense among fellow citizens, families, doctors, judges, and policemen, and in time, social workers, that they were, if not actually violent, then certainly aberrant. Their odd ways were often a burden to friends and loved ones, to others off putting at best, unconventional, unpredictable, unsettling. They were disturbing, therefore disturbed, and maybe dangerous. The aberrances deemed most disturbing, even if not violent, most in fact are not, were those seen linked to sex. Oh, God. A woman locked up at the Toronto Queen Street Asylum prior to 1900, a quarter were in for female trouble. Childbirth, lactation, miscarriage, menstrual disorders, uterine disorders, and other natural conditions seen as the predisposing cause of insanity. That is some freaking bullshit. Following are some excerpts from the historical research of Kathleen Kendall, School of Medicine, Southampton University. Criminal lunatics became recognized as a unique group only in the 19th century. Prior to this time, criminals, the insane, and debtors were all confined together in jails. Oh my God, can you imagine? However, early Canadians soon found that jails were becoming overcrowded and were increasingly concerned about the changes associated with urbanization, industrialization, and immigration. In response to these social forces, reformers began to employ scientific methods, including classification, as a means of reestablishing order, and control. The separation of criminals and lunatics was part of this endeavor, achieved through the creation of two institutions of great significance: the Kingston Penitentiary in 1835 and the Temporary Lunatic Asylum at Toronto in 1841. A permanent asylum, the Provincial Lunatic Asylum, was completed in 1851. Criminal lunatics soon proved troublesome to both the penitentiary and the asylum. Can you imagine having, like, for me, for instance, say I was put into the asylum because I have endometriosis, and I was in there with serial killers, like I was in there with Paul Bernardo. Can you imagine? And it was all open, and we just got thrown in there together? Hell no. Criminal lunatics soon proved troublesome to both the penitentiary and the asylum. Because of their emotional and sometimes physical outbursts, they disrupted the disciplinary regimen underlying the penitentiary. More importantly, however, criminal lunatics were a philosophical conundrum. They were considered a contradiction in terms, inasmuch as the word criminal obviously implies a knowledge of evil, while the word lunatic as evidently implies an utter absence of that knowledge. Female criminal lunatics were an even greater enigma regarding moral agency, since the sexual ideology at the time maintained that women were inherently virtuous and innocent. The fusion of insanity, criminality, and femininity appeared incongruent. In transgressing the boundaries of classification, criminal lunatic women disrupted attempts to maintain order and control. As categorical anomalies, female criminal lunatics fitted into neither the asylum nor the penitentiary. However, since this group contained elements of criminality and lunacy, they belonged in both institutions. No, I don't think so. This is like bad. Consequently, they were shuffled back and forth between institutions that were wanted by neither. The animosity and vitriol detected at criminal lunatics finally resulted in the establishment of a temporary criminal lunatic asylum within the penitentiary in 1885 in response to evils arising from the reception of insane criminals at the provincial lunatic asylum. Eternal General Sir John A. Macdonald recommended that the portion of the provincial penitentiary be fitted up for the reception of the criminal lunatics in the asylum, now 21 in number, as well as for those at present confined in the several country of the Upper Canada. Macdonald also suggested that provision would be needed for the separation of the sexes. In his letter to one of the penitentiary inspectors, the warden echoed its last concern. There must be a positive decision as to female convicts, as they cannot be confined within the same prisons as the male lunatics, there not being any place for them. The issue was resolved by the inspector's decision that, after very careful examination of the penitentiary, there is no possibility of making a proper place for female lunatics, and would therefore recommend that none of this class be forwarded to this institution. The success of the inspector's decision is apparent in the warden's smug reply. We are rid of the females, which is quite satisfactory. Consequently, when the criminal lunatic asylum finally opened in June 1885, there were no females among its occupants. Female criminal lunatics remained in the provincial lunatic asylum until their transfer to the horse stables at Rockwood in 1857. The act creating the criminal lunatic asylum at Rockwood stated that the following classes of people were to be admitted into it. If one, convicts in the penitentiary became insane while under sentence there. 2. Certain classes of lunatics committed to jail as lunatics dungeons to be at large. 3. Persons charged with some offense of which they had been acquitted on the ground that they were insane at the time such offense was committed. 4. As persons indicted for any offense and upon arraignment thereof found by a jury, especially impaneled for the purpose of to be insane. The new establishment, Rockford Asylum, served only as an estate owned by John Cartwright. Following Cartwright's death, a physician named John Palmer Litchfield rented the Rockford villas as a private asylum. Litchfield was eventually appointed medical superintendent of the temporary criminal lunatic asylum in the Kingston Penitentiary. It is perhaps unsurprising, therefore, that in July 1856, the Crown purchased 35 acres of the Rockwood estate to establish a permanent asylum for criminal and lunatics, just as the penitentiary warden was relieved to rid himself of the female criminal lunatics. So too was the medical superintendent of the provincial lunatic asylum, glad to have this group removed from his establishment. Sounds like they all hate women. Superintendent Joseph Workman was not afraid to show his aversion to the criminal lunatics. For example, in his first annual report, he referred to criminal lunatics as moral monsters. This might partially explain why the women were sent to Rockford before the architect had even finished his plans for the asylum. Although the new asylum building was not completed until 1870, men began as early as 1862 to occupy those parts of it that were considered inhabitable. Male prisoners were sporadically admitted into the finished parts of the building as the work progressed. Women, however, remained in the stables until 1868. The social former Henry Hurd painted a stark illustration of these stables. This substitute for an asylum was arranged with single rooms for 20 inmates, while a wooden addition made thereto comprised 4 strong walls, a keeper's room, and a dining room, beyond which again was a kitchen. The size of a single room was 9 feet by 5 feet. Oh my God. They were lighted by miserable little barred peepholes measuring only 18 inches by 12 inches. The entrance was on the west side, and a small hallway was used as an office. Dowell's depiction of the stables is no less horrific. Human contact was minimal, as the women were shut in one by one, and 1/4 inch thick doors, 6 feet high and 2 feet wide. Food was shoved into the 9 foot by 5 foot cells through a slit in the door. Given this portrait, the following poem, conceived during Cartwright's ownership of the estate, can only be read with a sense of irony. Oh, would to God that I were able to build a house like Cartwright's stable. It fills my heart with great remorse to be worse housed than Cartwright's horse. Wow. The recollections of a former employee of the asylum, Mr. Evans, provides more information about the conditions in which the women lived. According to Evans, the beds were made of straw ticks and pillows, and the walls and ceilings were whitewashed with lime. He further notes that Dr. Litchfield was the only physician at the time. Litchfield's treatment relied heavily upon a pretty free use of alcohol by day and a sedative at night. Along with restraint, other methods of choice included bloodletting, leeching, enemas, and blistering. Holy fuck. I read it. It's really good, Teresa. Sorry, I didn't read it. I watched the movie. Hey, Chronically Be Queen. Bright Trio? Yeah, it's just a rename of the channel. No, you're not a fool. I just decided to. I did. I watched the movie starring Christina Ricci. It was a great movie. It was really good. And there is the book. It's really, really short though. But I was thinking about getting it just to keep on with this. But back then you would be considered crazy for speed. Yeah, I know, right? Oh, it's good. Broadmoor is an asylum in the UK. It's scary. You're not scared of demons? I am. She did. Deb knows. Me and Deb are the only ones I think that really know about her. She's amazing. She really is. I don't see no Chronic, but if you're in here, hi Chronic. I'd be interested in that though, too, as well, chronically. Oh my God, I'm a moron. Hi, Chronic. Yeah, as in chronically be clean, Nikki, not chronic space. Sorry. All right, I'll continue reading this. So Litchfield was also clear that successful therapy hinged on the careful observation and classification of patients, along with the establishment of a trusting relationship with them. Fundamentally, he maintained that criminal lunatics were no more dangerous or violent than other lunatics and therefore should be treated like ordinary patients. Oh my God. This argument formed Litchfield's recommendation that the asylum become open to non criminals. He was concerned that non-criminals were being justly charged with criminal offenses and ordered that they be admitted into the asylum. Family and friends were using this method as a means of avoiding sending their loved ones to the provincial lunatic asylum in Toronto, some distance away. The government accepted Litchfield's proposal and the asylum became open to non-criminals in 1868. Unfortunately, Litchfield died soon thereafter. His successor, Dr. Dixon, was oh my God, adamantly was adamantly opposed to the mixing of criminals and non-criminals. Yeah, I have to agree with that. Dixon urged that the two classes must be kept apart. The criminal and the non-criminal classes of lunatics should never, under any circumstances, be admitted for treatment to the same building. They should never be permitted to commingle, as one vicious criminal is sufficient to contaminate a whole ward full. Sorry, my lips are tired. A whole ward full. Dixon supported his motion on the grounds that the stigma associated with the criminal population prevented families and friends from sending their innocent relations to Rockwood. However, this argument is groundless because the asylum was filled to capacity, and there were few criminal lunatics left along its population. Indeed, only 10% of the female population and 29% of the male population between 1856 and 1877 were criminal lunatics. The great majority of the population had not committed criminal offenses, but were instead considered to be dangerous at large. Despite the lack of evidence, the government was convinced by Dixon's argument, and in 1877, the Rockwood Asylum stopped admitting criminals apart from those whose sentences had expired. On 30 June 1877, 22 criminal lunatics were transferred from Rockwood to the Kingston Penitentiary. Only one, Sophia Boisclair, was female. The following database has been constructed from records of the Kingston Rockwood Insane Asylum. Each record in my index consists of the name of the inmate, the home residence of the inmate, i.e., district, county, town, and the age of the resident. The complete insane asylum records contain a wealth of information on your ancestor that will not be found in any records available. Data that may be included amount of info recorded varies from case to case, and the registers includes country of birth, previous places of abode, by whom supported, friends, province, sex, age, single or married, number of children, occupation, degree of education, religion, habits of life, i.e., sober, sedate, intemperate, time submitted, date of admission, date of discharge, this off and death date in asylum, time in asylum, age at first attack, number of previous attacks, duration of present attack, whether suicidal or dangerous nature of crime, if convicted before admission, cause of disorder, i.e., hereditary, life or a life event, form of mental disorder, hallucinations, accompanying body disorder, results, i.e., died, discharged, cause of death, general observations. Many of the post 1878 records include detailed medical reports. Many of the inmates were repeat patients over these years. The researchers interested in using my very fast and convenient research services to obtain the complete insane asylum record may contact, those who wish to use the database as guides in their own searches are welcome to do so. As far as locations are concerned, country, township, town, or village are recorded for many individuals. Many were listed as being from various gaols, but researchers should keep in mind that many of these individuals originally were from elsewhere in the province. For those individuals whose residences are not given, their location often can be identified by doing an online census search. Use the links below for London Asylum, Toronto Asylum databases, Malden Asylum, and the Hamilton Insane Asylum. These are all the asylums. Look at the names. I wonder if I know anybody. Watch me find my family name here. No, I think I'm good. And what green stuff? Oh, okay. You're a freak too, don't worry. Oh, Teresa, for fuck's sake. Unless you like how skunks spell. I'm engaging in being a herbivore. Yeah, it's the best remedy, Atrio. An island of chaos. Okay. Oh my god, I'm not KJ. Stay on topic. Don't derail the chat, guys, with Pat. Can you imagine? I couldn't imagine being that person. All right, I'm gonna go. Can't believe I was on this late, but it was fun actually. Watch Nini's video she came out with today. It's exactly what staying on topic and going off subject. She titled it something like basically how KJ always lets her subs and members say whatever they want. They can talk, they can ask questions and whatnot. Yeah, okay. We all know that's bullshit, but Nini Marie made a video about it. You guys gotta watch it. It's really good. All right, I'm gonna get off here because now I'm hungry and I need to scroll through the rest of this to see if any of my family is in here. If there is, I'm calling Grams. Yeah, I shouldn't. She probably won't even remember. Oh, you said you hope it wasn't. Are you gonna block us for talking about weed? No. Stay on topic. I'm gonna delete your I'm turning comments off. Like I don't know how anybody can be like that and still have subs. Oh yeah, you guys are real blue. Well, all right. You guys have a good night. I'll be back tomorrow with some Jack the Ripper. And I've got another video that I'm gonna show you where that same channel was talking about. I think the last one we watched was what, Annie Chapman. We still need the other three. Marianne Nichols, Martha Tabram, and Emily something or other. All right, you guys have a great night. I'll be back tomorrow at 7 p.m. Bye.